Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cold Hard Truth podcast. I'm Jack Smith.
I'm Srikar. I'm Anish Gupta.
And today we're going over the second half of our first round no-trade mock draft. Today we're doing 17 through 32. We already did 1 through 16 in the last episode, so if you missed it, go check it out on YouTube and Spotify. And we start off with pick number 17 and the Cowboys. We debated this last time. I have Trevon Diggs as a second corner on my board. Cowboys need DB. He's the best available in my mock draft, so I have them going Trevon Diggs at pick 17. Who do you guys have?
A speedy do-it-all edge defender isn't the biggest need for the Dallas Cowboys, but with the top cornerbacks off the board, in my opinion, and LSU's Chaisson still available, Jerry Jones and company can't resist the opportunity to add another weapon on defense. Chaisson is projected as a speed rusher, but he also dropped into coverage, and he was asked to stack up against the run at LSU. I think he's most productive getting after the quarterback and the most valuable there, but he's a three-down player with a versatile skill set, and I think he'll fit perfectly with Jaylon Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. Drafting a wide receiver or safety or a DB here might be too tempting to pass up, but I feel like Chaisson is the perfect mix of value and fit.
So I had Chaisson as well available in my mock draft. I think if you're the Cowboys, how can you pass up on in my opinion, a great replacement for Robert Quinn? Him and DeMarcus Lawrence off the edge would be absolutely lethal. And I think Chaisson has a higher ceiling than Robert Quinn. And the Trevon Diggs pick, again, I don't see him better than Jeff Gladney or Christian Fulton. I even think if you had a choice between any DB, I think Xavier McKinney is even a better option there, his Alabama counterpart. So I don't know what you see in Trevon Diggs aside from maybe his football genetics with Stephon Diggs. I really don't. I don't know what else, but if you would like to explain on that, Jack, I don't see why you would.
Yeah, we kind of touched on it at the end of last episode. I just think his ability to make plays as well as be a sure tackler, and just his defensive IQ on the field when you see him play, it makes me the second corner because I think he's well-rounded. Like we talked about, CJ Henderson can't really tackle. We've gone over some of the other guys. I think Christian Fulton is a little too aggressive in coverage. Like we've gone over it a little bit. Yeah. But I just think Trevon Diggs is well-rounded. I think he fits the Cowboys what they need because they need to replace Byron Jones. That's pretty obvious. And I think that Trevon Diggs being so well-rounded and being able to cover and tackle makes him a good fit for the Cowboys here.
I just don't see him as a Byron Jones kind of play style. I mean, obviously Byron Jones was not the guy that was going to get you 5 picks in a season. He was more of that kind of hands-on man-to-man type of guy. And I don't really see Trevon Diggs being that island corner. I believe he flourished well with Xavier McKinney. I feel like those two fed off each other a lot in Alabama's like Nick Saban's defense. And I just think that McKinney was a bit more of a player in that kind of duo than Trevon Diggs. I think Trevon got more off McKinney than what McKinney got off Trevon.
There are currently 3 cornerbacks that I would take over Trevon Diggs. I'd probably take Jeff Gladney, of course. Yep. Jalen Johnson or AJ Terrell. I'd take one of those 3 guys over Trevon Diggs any day.
I would take AJ Terrell and Christian Fulton over him.
Yeah, even Christian Fulton could be in the conversation.
I think the problem, if they're trying to draft to replace Byron Jones, I think that's a mistake. I think drafting to replace lost players is a mistake that teams make far too often. I just think that the Cowboys need to just draft a corner that matches what the kind of defense they want to play, and they just take the best one on the board. Trying to replace a player you previously had is never a recipe for success because you end up either reaching or taking a player that maybe you're not as confident in compared to other corners just to replace something that you previously had. So I think, I know you're not going to agree with me, but I think Trevon Diggs is the second best corner in this class, and I hope he proves me right. Any more notes on that? Or?
Yeah, just a quick note. I agree with your points by saying teams do make the mistake of taking players just to replace the ones they lose in free agency. But I think when you say the best player available, I think it goes in regards to all positions because they wouldn't just say, I will take the best player at this position. I think when you look at it, I think it's a lot more binary than people think in the NFL, especially with these scouts. I think they look at it again as whether we can find a player that can assess a team need, right? That could be major or minor, or we just see the best player available, which is for example, in my mock draft, I had Chaisson as the best player available at this time. So like, obviously he's not a necessity, he's not a team need, but I mean, if they have an outlook, right? Obviously the pass rush helps the secondary a lot more than the secondary helps the pass rush, in my opinion. And if you can get Chaisson and DeMarcus Lawrence on the same team, I think that's a lot more deadly than having, even no matter the corner, even if it was Christian Fulton or whatever corner it was. I just think in my scenario, Chaisson would be a better fit, aside from team needs. So I think when you look at, what players are available, I think they look at it just from the overall perspective, not just by position.
Yeah, I think I would have had him go Chaisson, except I had him go the pick before the Falcons at the end of last episode. So I see what you mean. I know you're not going to agree with it. I believe Trevon Diggs would be the best DB on the board, and that's the biggest team need for them at the moment, in my opinion. So I had to have them go him right there at pick 17. Srikar, anything else?
Nope. I'm going to go Chaisson. It's not exactly a need pick, like Anish said, but I think they got to go with the best player available.
All right. And so moving on to the Dolphins, it seems like a consensus the Dolphins will pick a tackle at pick 18, and I have them selecting Austin Jackson, tackle out of USC. A lot of people have Josh Jones over Austin Jackson. I'm going to be completely honest. This is a little bit of my bias. I've seen Austin Jackson play countless snaps at USC, and just because I solely know more about him than I do Josh Jones, I'm very confident in Austin Jackson's ability to translate to the NFL. I think he has a ton of upside. I think he's just a great human being in general, and that's a lot of the things that people look when drafting. And so I think that Austin Jackson should be the pick here for the Dolphins. Josh Jones might be a better player. For now, I know more about Austin Jackson, and I'm confident in his ability in the NFL. So I had to have him go to the Dolphins here at pick 18.
The Dolphins got their quarterback at number 5 overall. Now it's time to protect him. I think it's been underreported nationally, but Miami has a big problem at both offensive tackle spots. So finding a starter with the second of its 3 first-rounders has to be a priority. But I do think Houston's Josh Jones fits the bill on the left side. He was knocked for not playing against great competition in college, but he stood out throughout the week of Senior Bowl practices while facing the best senior pass rushers in the nation. Proving himself on that stage shot Jones' stock into the first round and right into the orbit of the Dolphins at number 18 overall.
So I agree that the Dolphins do need a tackle, but I went a completely different route here. I think that they can easily get a tackle with their 3rd first-round pick. So with the second one, I actually took it's kind of a weird pick. I took a chance on it, but as I was saying, I actually have the other Alabama counterpart going to the Dolphins at, I believe, pick 18, and Xavier McKinney, the safety from Alabama. Now, I know Jack doesn't see him as a first-round talent, but I believe –
Not true. We'll get into it later. I don't see him as a first-round talent, but I see him as a first-round pick, if that makes any sense as a team need. But we'll get into it later.
I see him as both. I see him as a first-round talent and a first-round pick. And I know pick 18 seems a bit high for him, but I think again, I look at level of competition a lot. And if you're able to play in Alabama and be this productive and play, obviously, great receivers, you get to play great quarterbacks in the SEC. And not only that, I mean, Alabama DBs have always rather been pretty stellar. And obviously, they just lost Minkah Fitzpatrick. Why not go get an Alabama counterpart in Xavier McKinney? And I think he can easily flourish into a Minkah Fitzpatrick type player. The Dolphin Brian Flores would love to have a lengthy while also fast defensive back in Xavier McKinney. So that's the pick I went to, and I believe that they can easily get a tackle at, I believe, pick 26 is what they have.
Yeah. So here's a question I'll pose to you: Is Grant Delpit also plays in the SEC, played against almost the same amount of competition as Xavier McKinney? What do you see in McKinney that you don't see in Delpit that have him drafted?
I believe Delpit can be too aggressive at times, and also he lacks tackling discipline. So I don't know if that's a good terminology to say, but I just think McKinney is a better tackler and he's more poised.
Okay, I can see that. Let's move on to the Raiders. I know I put Trevon Diggs over him, and that was a big argument last episode. But I have C.J. Henderson out of Florida going here to the Raiders. Not a big gap between him and Diggs, in my opinion, but enough to have him be going here instead of the previous picks. But I think the Raiders pick up a good solid corner out of the SEC, which we just talked about, playing good quarterbacks and receivers. And I think he immediately almost becomes the number 1 corner on this team, or at least I think he will be by the end of the year.
So In my mock draft with the 12th selection, the Raiders went to Alabama for a game-changing wide receiver in Henry Ruggs. At number 19 overall, Mike Mayock will dip back into Nick Saban's program to add a utility knife defender with coverage skills who might be the answer to the tight ends in the AFC West. I'm going to go with Xavier McKinney. He can play free safety, and that's going to allow Jonathan Abram to roam in the box, but he's also proved himself capable of playing all over the secondary. He could be an excellent matchup cover man. If you're seeing Travis Kelce, Noah Fant, Hunter Henry 6 times a season, having more options in coverage isn't a bad thing. Safety would rank behind cornerback as the biggest need for the Raiders, but I think the value of McKinney and how well he and Abram would work together make this a great pick.
Okay, so I'm not one to make the boldest predictions here. I'm fine with CJ Henderson going there. In my opinion, he's a top 15 talent. So if the Raiders can get him there, hey, that's great for them. And obviously, I'm fine with McKinney again. Like I said, I'm a big fan of his for your pick, Srikar. So this is a pretty big one. I had the Raiders taking Jordan Love with the 19th pick.
Wow.
And it's a pretty, I mean, it sounds very weird just because obviously they went after Mariota and they still have Derek Carr. It just spoke to me when I was doing my mock draft. I just think that Mike Mayock sees something in Jordan Love, and I think he kind of fits what the Raiders are trying to do, especially with John Gruden. Now, having 3 quarterbacks will be very, very interesting. But however, I don't think Derek Carr will last in Las Vegas. I don't think he's going to last with the Raiders after this year. I'm still unsure about that. This is a pretty big year for him in terms of proving what he can do. Obviously, he had a decent year last year, so maybe he can build on it and prove some haters wrong. Obviously, Mariota is still there, and he's won a playoff game, so he has something to prove on his resume, obviously being the former 2nd overall pick. But I don't know. I just think if with this extra first-round pick, I think they take a chance on Jordan Love that a lot of teams have been passing up on. And while people are saying that he's a potentially day 2 pick, I mean, I think his game just fits what the Raiders are trying to do there. And I think it's a good compliment with Josh Jacobs in the backfield. I think it's a great compliment with Darren Waller and all these tight ends because he did use them at Utah State. So I like this pick. And obviously it's a pretty bold one considering there's a lot of cornerbacks and other team needs that they could have addressed here. Like, for example, they could have taken Jeff Gladney, who I'll get into later, or Christian Fulton, who I really like. But I think I'm this is probably my boldest prediction of my entire mock draft. And yeah, I have him going with Jordan Love.
Yeah, a lot of things I've heard about Jordan Love is, I mean, he has Patrick Mahomes-like upside, but he is the biggest work in progress of all the quarterbacks in this draft. So if the Raiders really think that they can make it work with Love, I would definitely see that pick. But the problem is, I think the reason that Mahomes succeeded so well is because he got to sit behind Alex Smith for a year and then came into a system with Andy Reid as his coach. He had Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce as weapons, and a great offensive line in front of him. And I just think that the Raiders don't offer that kind of security for a quarterback. I don't think learning behind Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota comes close to the teaching that Alex Smith was able to give Mahomes. I don't see John Gruden as an Andy Reid type coach, especially offensively. And I personally just don't think that the Raiders offensive line or weapons will match up to what Mahomes had with the Chiefs. So if they do make this pick and they rush it too much with Love, you could see a player with tons of talent and upside almost immediately wasted by a team who used him wrong. So I think it would be an interesting pick, but I would be very scared to see how they handled Love because it could easily go down the drain as a waste of a first-round pick.
I just wanted to quickly address your assessment. I completely agree with what you said about Mahomes. I've always been one to say that he's a great product of what Andy Reid has provided. Obviously, he's talented. He's insanely gifted. And he's proven me wrong constantly. Obviously, in the Super Bowl, he proved a lot of people wrong in that fourth quarter. I think, however, the Raiders' assessment, I think, is it's pretty deep because I do like their offensive line. Rodney Hudson, Gabe Jackson, Trent Brown. I think all these guys, Richie Cognito, all of these guys have been working really well. And the Raiders have honestly had a top 10 offensive line these past few years. So I think their offensive line is great. I think their weapons are developing. And like in my mock draft, if they take Jerry Jeudy, right, they have Jeudy, Tyrell Williams, Darren Waller, and obviously Jason Witten to kind of help mentor those receivers in a way. I think that's a great fit for someone like Jordan Love, who has weapons on both the outside and kind of inside with Darren Waller over there. Obviously, you have one of the game's better electrifying running backs in Josh Jacobs, who when healthy was considered a top 10 running back as a rookie. So I actually kind of like the system that he would be going into. While John Gruden is not known for being a quarterback guru in a way, like at least in the NFL, I think he can work with Jordan Love in a sense. And while Carr and Mariota will give him the best mentorship, I feel like Love does reflect a lot of Mariota's game. So I think I could see some parallels there.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I would be scared. I'm just kind of scared. I wouldn't say that it would guaranteed not work out. I can see problems that could arise. So they could make it work. I'm not denying that. It's just a little bit nerve-wracking to see if they would actually be able to do it. Especially, I just struggle to believe that John Gruden could be the Andy Reid to Jordan Love like he was to Mahomes. So, I mean, I can see it working out, but I can also see it crashing and burning. So it'd be a very interesting pick. And I think, personally, I believe that'd be a reach at 19. But, I mean, I can see it happening.
It's not too much of a reach, though. Not by much.
I just don't see him really as a first-round pick because of the amount of risk that it comes with.
And think about it. The Raiders are probably going to take a receiver with their 12th pick anyway. So you're already giving this Jordan Love another weapon. So, I mean, I kind of agree with Anish. The Raiders do have a pretty good O-line. So, I mean, it's not the worst situation that you can get thrown into. So, I mean, but I just don't see how it would make sense. I would be kind of hesitant because you signed Mariota for a reason. And I just think you're going to lower his confidence a little bit if you draft Jordan Love. So I would stay away from him and rather I just address something on defense.
So yeah, it's a good assessment. I think just a quick note, though, teams do seem to kind of be invested in their quarterbacks when they pick them. Like, for example, a lot of the quarterbacks that get drafted, teams usually trade up for them. For example, Carson Wentz, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, the list goes on. So if they, I mean, obviously they didn't trade up for him here, but they did have that first round pick via trade. I think they would seem invested in Jordan Love to pick him in the first round rather than wait for him in the second. So it's an interesting assessment. I think you guys make great points. I think it's just a high risk, high reward type thing.
Yeah. So let's move on to the Jaguars. Just talked about Josh Jones. I have him going here. To be completely honest, either Austin Jackson or Josh Jones will be available here for the Jaguars, and I think that should be the move for them because they need a tackle. They don't have a top tackle, and they haven't for a while. And I think they can get one here in Josh Jones or Austin Jackson at the back half of the first round. And I think that should easily be the pick for them because they've addressed a lot of their spots on defense that they really can. And I just don't see a fit for them in the rest of the first round with the players that I've been going over and we'll go over for the rest of the episode. I think that a tackle is just the best option for them here at pick 20 so they don't reach for a player down at the bottom of the first round.
Yeah, the Jaguars solidified the defensive line at number 9 overall. Now it's time to get a left tackle for 2020 and beyond after learning that Cam Robinson isn't the long-term answer. I think Austin Jackson is a bit of a work in progress, but he's a good player as is. His ceiling will be exceptionally high if he's able to add some play power and I think protect his inside shoulder better. But he has a special ability to kick step and slide to shut down these speed rushers that we see in today's NFL. I think the Jaguars will work with his hands inside while loving that he can keep the AFC South's outside rushers off second-year quarterback Gardner Minshew.
Again, I went in a different direction than you guys. So I had them picking Jeff Gladney via the Rams pick. I think he's a great replacement for AJ Boye, who they just lost and gave up for a fourth rounder. I really like his game from out of TCU, I believe. And I personally would put him as the top 3 cornerback in this draft. I think his combination of size and length and speed is great, especially for a team that obviously just lost 2 top 10 corners in over a span of 2 years. So, or actually, over a span of 1 season. So it's been kind of up and down for this team, but I think getting Gladney over there with I believe Tom Coughlin's still there. I'm not sure, but I think he can.
Yeah, I think he is too.
I'm not sure, but I think just his he's always been a defensive minded guy, so I think he'll build the coaches. I'm sure the defensive back coaches out there can easily help him the way they did with Boye and Ramsey. So I have them taking Gladney here.
Yeah, I think if C.J. Henderson manages to fall to the Jaguars, that'd be almost a perfect fit for them. But unfortunately for them, I had him going the pick before. But being able to keep him in Florida would be almost a perfect storm. And I can see the Jaguars trading up if they really believe in Henderson and in the state of Florida.
Again,
And I
top
mean,
15 talent in my opinion.
with all of the late round picks and mid round picks that they got from trading away their players, they could easily find a partner and move up earlier in the first round. Srikar, do you want to start us off on the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, pick the best wide receiver on the board and assign him to the Philadelphia Eagles. That's the mock draft strategy. Eagles fans will no doubt be excited. Their team landed a sure-handed, fast route runner who has the week one skills to start opposite Alshon Jeffrey. Gone are the days of slow-footed receivers with shaky hands. Justin Jefferson's ability to play inside or outside and use these crafty routes with quick feet and deep speed to get open, I think that's going to be a very welcome addition. Jefferson is the wide receiver 4 in this loaded historic class, but it's fair to say that in a normal year of receivers, he would be ranked much higher. I think he would have been the top wideout in the 2018 and 2019 classes.
Wow. Bold statement, but I agree here. I picked Justin Jefferson to go to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, a lot of Eagles fans, while they're happy with the offseason, they're a bit mad that they didn't really solidify help for Carson Wentz. And can you blame him? In my opinion, Carson Wentz, when healthy, is a top 8 quarterback. And I really like his game. I believe he's been able to make plays with receivers that no one has even heard of. And if you can get him a speedy playmaker who shines in big games in Justin Jefferson, I think this is a great fit here. Just because you have Alshon Jeffrey, who, while he is injury prone, he's still a pretty good number 1 receiver when healthy. And I think Jefferson would be a great complement to him here.
Yeah, I disagree with you, Srikar, that Jefferson is the 4th receiver in this class, just because I'm not exactly sure the value of pure slot receivers in today's NFL. But I do have him going to the Eagles here, and it's one of my more confident selections in this back half of the first round because I think he's a perfect fit. I think if you have Deshaun Jackson and Alshon on the outsides with Jefferson in the slot, that's much better than what they had last year with the injuries they had and having Nelson Aguilar on the outside who couldn't catch a cold. No offense. I think that Jefferson would be a perfect fit for this Eagles team, and Carson Wentz would love to have him in the slot. I think his routes are superb, and you saw his stock rise. It was for good reason because Joe Burrow was able to use him in the slot, and all of his moves, even after the catch, make him very valuable for their quarterback, and Carson Wentz will love him in Philly.
Yeah, quick note on that too. I mean, we've seen Zach Ertz line up in the slot a lot. In fact, Aguilar's best seasons were when he was in the slot as well. So I think Jefferson is a better talent than Aguilar, in my opinion. He obviously has better hands, and I think he'll be a great fit.
Yeah. So let's go to the Vikings. I have Jeff Gladney going here. Anish just touched on him. I agree. I think he's a great talent, a top 5 corner in this class. And the Vikings really struggling after losing almost all of their corners in free agency. Need a replacement. They get one here at pick 22, their first of their 2 second-round picks, or the first of their 2 first-round picks, sorry. I want to, before we kind of talk about who you guys have, do you think it's a possibility that the Vikings will pair their 2 first-round picks to trade up if they believe in a different DB in this class?
It's possible, but if I were them, I think I'd stay where you are because if Gladney is still on the board, and plus the cornerback class is actually pretty deep. So, I mean, I wouldn't trade up, but if you really are set on one guy, then of course I'd try my best and trade up.
I think it's kind of uncertain. I think it's a good question, Jack. I think it's in regards to the cornerback class. A lot of people, myself included, I believe that the cornerback class is pretty deep. Aside from Jeff Okudah, I think he's separated himself pretty far apart from the rest of them, which is why a lot of us don't even have any of them going in the top 10. But in my opinion, I think C.J. Henderson is a clear number 2, with guys like A.J. Terrell coming in, Christian Fulton. So I think it's a pretty deep class. If the Vikings really want Henderson, I think that's the only guy I can see them really going for because Okudah is going to be a tough guy to get, even with those 2 first-round picks. I don't know if they're willing to invest that much in Jeffrey Okudah. So I think they're fine here. And if you guys are okay with it, I'm going to transition to what I believe they will pick. I also have them taking a DB. I have them taking, again, Christian Fulton out of LSU. I think he's a great corner, in my opinion, a top 4. Again, good size, good speed. And I think, obviously, I know I say it a lot, but, again, level of competition in my book is it's an extraordinary factor. And obviously playing against receivers such as Ruggs, Judy, rest of the guys in the SEC, I think it's a perfect fit here for the Vikings.
Yeah. After the team traded Stephon Diggs, I think most fans probably assume the Vikings will go after a wide receiver at number 22 overall, given the strength of the position in this year's class. But I don't think that's the case here because of the weakness at cornerback and other needs on the roster. With starters at wide receiver, I think it's expected to last well into the third round. The Vikings will instead go cornerback early and land one of the few week one starters in the class, in my opinion. Jeff Gladney from TCU is the guy. He is a fantastic press cover man who plays much bigger than his 5'10" size would indicate. I think he's NFL ready to play at the line of scrimmage, and he can wreck any receiver.
Yeah, I agree with you saying that some people may believe the Vikings go receiver here. The only way I can see them not going DB, however, is if Justin Jefferson falls, because I think that'd be a perfect Stephon Diggs replacement. The problem is I just don't see him getting past the Eagles unless something crazy happens where Ruggs or Lamb is available for the Eagles, or maybe they like Mims a little bit more, who I have as the fourth receiver on my board. But I think getting Gladney would be perfect for the Vikings, and I think they'd love to have a corner of his talent available at pick 22. And then quickly shifting to pick 23, which is the New England Patriots, I have them selecting AJ Epinesa to shore up that defensive line, because I think that that's kind of the Patriots' way, is they take players who are full of talent that are maybe overlooked in the draft process. Because AJ Epinesa, I mean, he used to be a top 10 talent in some people's minds, and now some people don't have him in the first round. It's hard to see why. I'm not sure exactly why he's fallen so much, but it seems just a perfect Patriots pick to pick him up after him sliding and get him here at pick 23. And I think that Bill Belichick would be delighted to have a player of his talent to be able to move around the defensive line.
When it comes to draft strategy, I think the New England Patriots are a blank slate after losing Tom Brady, Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins in free agency. All we know right now is that they'll once again be loaded with compensatory draft picks in 2021. At number 23 overall, there could be pressure to draft a quarterback of the future, but word around the league is that the Patriots like 2019 fourth rounder Jarrett Stidham and believe he can be the answer for life after Brady. If that's the case, plugging holes on defense will help Bill Belichick get back to his roots as a head coach. Yetur Gross-Matos is an impressive person and player. He has the size to play 4-3 defensive end right out of the gate. And I think he's going to remind fans of Trey Flowers with his mixture of power and quickness. He's also just scratching the surface of what he can be down the road with good coaching, something I think he'll get plenty of in New England from Bill Belichick.
Yeah, so I agree there. I think they do address defense. I don't think the need for quarterback is as absurd as fans want it to be. I think Stidham, I mean, it's interesting because he didn't really even have a good preseason, but like Belichick likes him. So, and again, if there's any coach that I would put my money on, it's him. So that being said, I believe they go with Patrick Queen here, linebacker out of LSU. And I think his pass coverage ability is second to none amongst linebackers in this class, aside from Isaiah Simmons, of course. But I think his pass coverage, Patrick Queen, I think it's pretty up there. So, and I think Belichick loves his linebackers that can do a bit of both, while Queen needs to work a little bit more of getting in between tackles and stuff. I think his kind of build is perfect for the New England system. I see a lot of parallels to Donta Hightower, and as well as Jamie Collins, in fact. And I think his fit there would be great. Not to mention Gerard Mayo, a former linebacker for them a long time ago. But I see a lot of parallels with Gerard Mayo in Patrick Queen, and I think he'd be a great fit here.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. If they want to go linebacker, I think Patrick Queen would be a near perfect fit for the Patriots. Moving on to the Saints, I actually have Patrick Queen going right here to New Orleans. They keep him in Louisiana. I just believe that aside from Demario Davis, the Saints have a need for linebacker, and I think that Patrick Queen fills it in perfectly to get to keep him in the state of Louisiana. And I just think that they'll be able to do so much with him alongside Demario Davis. He'll be able to be coached not only by defense coordinator, but by Demario Davis and form one of the better linebacker duos in this league. Patrick Queen I have as the second linebacker in this draft behind Isaiah Simmons. It's a big gap, but I think that Queen really has set himself apart, and I think that'd be a perfect fit for the New Orleans Saints right here.
Do you believe that a soon-to-be 30-year-old Taysom Hill is the answer at quarterback once Drew Brees retires? Because even if Sean Payton tells everyone in the media that the Saints believe in Hill, the Saints have not been shy about interviewing the quarterbacks in the 2020 draft class. And with Jordan Love falling down the board in this no trades mock draft, New Orleans finally gets its answer to the post-Breeze era. He is a big-armed, mobile, playmaking quarterback, but his 17 interceptions in 2019 are worrisome. Even if you account for his pressing to make something happen on a bad Utah State team, something many scouts believe, he still has to clean up his decision-making. That's why Love is perfect to sit and learn behind Breeze before taking the job in 2021 or 2022.
That's a good assessment for Jordan Love. Then again, I just don't. His game is so different from Drew Brees, and also like Peyton hasn't really worked with a quarterback like that. But it's an interesting assessment. I'm not going to discount it. I think it's a for sure a possibility. So that being said, with my pick, I went with Zach Bond, linebacker out of Wisconsin, just because I think the Saints do need a linebacker, and I think Bond is a pretty close. I think his game is really similar to Patrick Queen. Obviously, I think there's a huge difference though with Queen. Queen also got to show a lot more in the college football playoff, and Zach Bond obviously did not get as much time to kind of show that. But I think he's a great fit here again, similar to what Jack said about how he can be mentored under Demario Davis, who while he is starting to get older, I think his play style is great, and I think those two can really feed off each other.
See, the problem I think with Bond here is he's a 3-4 outside linebacker, so he's mainly a pass rusher. He is able to fall back into coverage, but his main job I think in the NFL will be trying to get to the passer. So I'm not sure exactly how much of a fit he'll be to the Saints.
That is true. I just think like Demario Davis is a good hybrid of both, but from what I've seen at least with Cleveland and New York, he was more of a pass coverage specialist earlier in his career, and I think those two can feed off each other. Obviously, you have Cam Jordan on that defensive line, and I think Zach Bond does need to work on his pass coverage a lot, and I think that's why New Orleans can be a great place for him to kind of learn that and kind of feed off of Davis' kind of play style, while his obviously his pass rushing ability is pretty good.
All right, and let's move on to the Vikings here. I have the Vikings replacing Stephon Diggs with my number 4 wide receiver in this class in Denzel Mims. Denzel Mims may be my favorite prospect of any in this draft because I love his upside. I think that he's done well with poor quarterback play, and I believe that in the NFL he will do much better than he did at Baylor, which is saying a lot because I thought he was one of the better receivers this year in college football. And I believe that with the Vikings and Kirk Cousins being alongside Adam Thielen, Mims will thrive and become one of the – I would say he would easily be a top 3 rookie receiver this year because I think he'll be able to make an immediate impact with good quarterback play for one of the first times in his career.
Okay, so after landing a starting cornerback at number 22 overall, the Vikings grab a wide receiver, right? Nope, not yet. We can't forget that the team also lost Everson Griffin this offseason, and I think they have a bigger need at defensive end than at wide receiver. And that's especially important to remember in a draft loaded at one position, receiver, and then thin at the other. So I'm going to go with AJ Epenesa here. He's a clean replacement for Griffin with his 6'5", 275-pound frame. I think he's going to bring a combination of power and quickness that will play perfectly opposite Danielle Hunter. And with Epenesa's proven play in the Big Ten over the last 2 seasons and his positional versatility, I think he's tailor-made for the Vikings 4-3 scheme.
You literally took the words right out of my mouth, Srikar. I had them. I think they can easily find a receiver in the second round. I think Reagor would be a great fit here, which they can get in the second round. That being said, I didn't have them picking Epenesa because I had Yetur Gross-Matos slipping down to them. And like you said, a Big Ten edge rusher with great combo of size and speed off the edge. Again, I think, in my opinion, he's a better complement to Danielle Hunter than Epenesa. That's why I went with Gross-Matos here. So I think the Vikings get their guy. Obviously, they lost Griffin and Linval Joseph. So I think defensive line is honestly a bigger need here than receiver right now because Thielen has shown he's been a number 1. I mean, people forget. Y'all remember, right? The 9 straight 100-yard games 2 years ago. Obviously, this year he kind of battled some injuries. But I think as a number 1 receiver, I'm fine with rocking with Adam Thielen. And I think you can get a Jalen Reagor in the second round to be a perfect complement there.
All right, I can definitely see Yetur Gross-Matos going to the Vikings. I just believe that wide receiver was more of a need for them at the moment, and I think that they just couldn't pass up on Mims, who I believe is a top talent in this draft class. But let's move on to the Dolphins at 26. I have them going safety from Alabama, Xavier McKinney. I do not believe that any safety is a first-round talent in this year's draft class, but so many teams need safety, and the Dolphins here with their third first-round pick, they go safety here in Xavier McKinney, who I believe was a high second-round pick, but getting him at 26 isn't too much of a reach. I think this is a great pick for the Dolphins, being able to solidify the back half of that secondary now with Xavier Kinney, Byron Jones, and blanking on the name. Who's the other corner that they have? Xavier Howard.
Xavier Howard.
So forming one of the better secondaries in the league now for a team that's already on the rise.
All right, quarterback, check. Left tackle, check. All right, so now it's time to give the Dolphins a go-to running back who can dominate on all three downs as a runner and receiver. I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift from Georgia. I think he's the 2020 drafts version of Alvin Kamara with his outside running quickness, inside vision, excellent hands. I think you guys may argue with me that waiting and using one of 2 second-round picks on a running back is a better value, but with fewer teams willing to give a second contract to a running back, I think landing that 5-year contract that comes with a first-round selection is important at this position. Controlling Swift for 5 years, that gives the Dolphins a winning window with the draft's best running back and the only true 3-down featured back threat.
Yeah, that's not a bad assessment for them, but one, I think they can easily get a Jonathan Taylor in the second round. And the problem is they already have Jordan Howard there, who I believe can be a 3-down back when given the right keys to the offense. We've seen it in Chicago before Tariq Cohen kind of got his thing going. Jordan Howard did have a 1,300-yard season and then an 1,100-yard season to follow that. So I think he would be a great fit in Miami as where he should be. And I think you can easily get, if you really want, a Jonathan Taylor in the second round. So, yeah, I guess Swift would be fine here, but I essentially think it's a reach. So I had them picking Xavier McKinney with their second first-round pick. Now I have them going O-line here. So I think, Jag, you and I have our pick switched. I believe you went Austin Jackson, but here I went with Josh Jones. And the reason why I put him over Austin Jackson, and I think Austin Jackson will be a day 2 pick, is because I believe Josh Jones has a good combo of length and athleticism. And I think he has a great bend on his lower half. And I think his ability to get through difficult blocks and play side to backside, I think it's really, really good. And I think it's a bit better than how Austin Jackson kind of plays. So I have them going with Josh Jones here. Obviously, he has some injury concerns, only playing 9 games in, I think, his final year in Houston. But aside from that, I think he can, over the summer, if he can learn some technique and be a little bit quicker laterally, I think he would be a great fit here for Miami.
Yeah, I think they'd be delighted if they were able to get him at 26. Srikar, I kind of wanted to address your pick a little bit. Do you think that getting DeAndre Swift in the first round is a smart choice if they know they can get either J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or Jonathan Taylor in the second round with either of their second-round picks?
See, but here's the thing. First-round selections get the 5-year contract. And we've seen that teams are not willing to give a second contract to these rookies. So, I mean, like, you can, but I mean, if I was the Dolphins, I'd get a running back in the first round, ensure that you have that running back for 5 years and you can use him while you have a winning window. Because what's going to happen then, because if you draft someone in the second round, I don't know how many years, is it 4 years, I think? But I mean, you want to ensure that you have your running back for as long as possible because we've seen in today's NFL that it's hard to keep them.
Well, I would say that's by choice because I think that more teams are realizing that having money tied down at the running back position is not as smart of a decision to do anymore because of how easily they break down and their bodies just wear down over time. So I think that more teams, it's not that they can't bring back their second contract, their running backs. I just think that some people are realizing it's just the smarter choice to move on at the running back position because it's one of the hardest positions to maintain your health at.
Exactly. I think you're forgetting Jordan Howard. Like, keep in mind,
not only that, why I want them to have a 1-2 punch. You can have Jordan Howard and DeAndre Swift in the same backfield. I don't think it's going to hurt Jordan Howard in any way.
I think it will because
only carries.
but Howard
I
hasn't
still think
thrived
he
with the
can
running back
produce.
by committee. With Philadelphia, it didn't really work out, and even in the latter half of his time in Chicago, it did not work out as well when he was a splitting
Well, you
carry
got to keep in
utility
mind
felon.
the Eagles had 4 running backs that they were just constantly switching in and out. With Miami, you're going to have 2, and you're going to use them both kind of. I kind of see it like you can get a Jonathan Taylor in the second round, and I'm not opposed to that. But the thing is, I'm just worried about the years on the contract. That's why I want to take DeAndre Swift in the first round and ensure you have that winning window, and you're going to have the best. I think he's the best running back in this class. So I'd rather get him in the first round and have a 1-2 punch with Jordan Howard. That's kind of what I'm just going for here with this pick.
Yeah, fifth-year option would be great, but the thing is, these running backs, like, you're not getting essentially a talent that really blows your mind off, and that fifth year is not going to be as vital for a running back that you're not heavily investing in with Jordan Howard already there. Like, there are running backs like Christian McCaffrey who went top 10, Todd Gurley top 10, Melvin Gordon top 15, all these running backs that went really high. Ezekiel Elliott with the 4th overall selection, as well as Leonard Fournette. All these running backs that have been picked very high in the first round, these teams are invested in them, and they do want that fifth year because they have a very good projection on what they're going to be. Keep in mind, DeAndre Swift did have a great O-line playing, and he did have great mentorship with Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. His ability for his game to translate to the next level, while there is a lot of potential there, there's a lot of uncertainty as well. And I think you can easily find a guy there in the second round because not one of these teams in the latter half of this first round is really going for a running back there. And I think you can easily pick him up there. That fifth year is not as valuable for a running back that you're not really essentially going all bonkers for in the giving a top 10 selection for that running back. Like, again, we've seen all these running backs that have gone in the top 10, top 15. They've paid off. Like, aside from Trent Richardson in the last 7 years, I can't really name one that has really let you down. Again, the names I mentioned, all of them have their fifth year picked up, and I think teams are happy with what they've done. Some are getting contracts, some aren't. We've seen that with Melvin versus Christian McCaffrey, right? It just depends on what they've been able to do and how teams are able to use them. I don't think DeAndre Swift would be used as well as he could in another system. While that being said, they could still take him in the second round. I think Jonathan Taylor would be a better fit in my opinion. But then again, I have a lot of faith in Jordan Howard, and I don't like him when he's in a running back with committee. And I think the Dolphins need to kind of reassess that. And I think a safety, at least in your scenario, I think a safety would be a better selection here than a running back.
So McKinney's taken for me. I think Jeremy Chinn's still on the board. You still got Delpit on the board for me. So yeah, as I said before, I'm not opposed to waiting because I knew that people would argue that like you could just use one of your second round picks and get a better value out of that. But I mean, it's what I think. It's like you say, Anish, it's like what I think the Dolphins will do versus what they should do. And I do think that they're going to go with a running back here.
All right, so we'll move on to the Seahawks. I have them taking Yetur Gross-Matos, who I think is a good pick. They've recently whiffed on, I think, a couple of defensive line selections in the draft, but I think Yetur Gross-Matos is the best out of them. I think he has the ability to play on the edge or even shift inside for them a little bit. So I think that he allows them flexibility that the recent selections didn't offer. So I think that Yetur Gross-Matos should be the pick for the Seahawks here.
Okay, so I think this is a big surprise pick for me. And it's going to come courtesy of the team that once shocked us all by selecting Rashad Penny in the first round. But trust me, this pick will work out better than that one. I'm going to go with Jeremy Chinn. He wowed scouts out at the Senior Bowl with his all-around athleticism and with how well his play translated against Power 5 competition. And then he then put on a show at the Combine running a 4.45 second 40-yard dash, and he recorded a 41-inch vertical jump at 6'3" and 221 pounds. And I think that teams that want a Derwin James-type safety but don't have the type of draft capital to land in Isaiah Simmons will be all over Jeremy Chinn, which is what Seattle does here in hopes of finding the next Cam Chancellor.
So, like you, Srikar, I have a surprise pick as well. It's I would say it's a reach, and I'm not saying Austin Jackson is a bad offensive tackle in any way. Obviously, Jack, you have some bias towards him, and what you've been saying, I think is great. I think he can easily go in the first round. I think he's no question in the top 40 of selections. But I'm going to go with Ezra Cleveland here. by the pick by the Seattle Seahawks out of Boise State. And I know I believe most scouts have him as a top 6 tackle, which is kind of low considering this is the first round of the NFL draft. But his athleticism is definitely top 3. And his low cut frame with desired center of gravity, especially his ability to help with the outside zone scheme, I think that is great for what Seattle's trying to do over there with them always being a run first team. They've always had a top 5 rushing attack in the last 5 years. And next year should be no exception with Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, obviously Rashad Penny coming back. So I think his consistent reach and seal as a play side blocker, I think is great. And like I said, there's been rumors about even the Cleveland Browns trying to kind of trading back and going for him in the second round or even in the first round. So I think his stock is kind of rising. And while Austin Jackson would be a perfect fit here as well, I just think Ezra's ability in the outside zone scheme, I think is a perfect fit for Seattle.
See, the problem with me is it's been a really long time since the Seahawks selected a first round offensive lineman, especially a tackle, because they find a way somehow every year to make it work with a subpar offensive line, because that's just kind of
Russell Wilson has found a way.
Exactly. Which is why I believe that when they have Russell Wilson, they do not need to invest first round picks into offensive line, because the way he plays, he doesn't need, sure protectors up front because he's able to scramble and make those plays. So I believe that they will look into positions that they need a little bit more than offensive line, because Russell Wilson will seemingly always be able to make it work without a top-tier tackle. So that's what the problem I have. I can see them doing it. I just don't think they need to because of the way that Russell Wilson plays.
Well, keep in mind, Wilson he's getting in the back half of his career, unfortunately. While he's still young, don't get me wrong, he still can play. I think it's time. It's got to be a time to start investing in the O-line. Like, it's never been good, and I think, what can go wrong here with taking Cleveland or even Austin Jackson? I think it's only going to make the O-line better. And keep in mind, they're still running the football a lot with their running backs. So they're running game. Their offensive line in terms of run blocking has never been as good as we would like. And I think if I was a Seattle Seahawks fan, I would love to have an offensive line beefed up by someone who's great with the run, and someone who can develop into a great pass blocker.
So let's move on to the Ravens. This is the pick I am most confident about. I have it almost a sure lock if he's available. I have Kenneth Murray to the Ravens here. The Ravens have lost middle linebackers in free agency over the past couple of years, C.J. Mosley and Patrick Owasso, the big names. And I believe they replace it here with a player that fits almost perfectly with the kind of grit and grind style that they like to have in their linebackers and the way they play defense. Kenneth Murray was easily the best player on Oklahoma's defense and proved it constantly throughout the year. And now I think he goes to the Ravens to be able to be that new signal caller at middle linebacker for them, and turns a defense that they've already improved over free agency and makes it even better through the draft. So I would love this pick if I were a Ravens fan, and I'd love this pick if I were Kenneth Murray, because he goes to a place where he can be the number one linebacker, and I think he'll do it very well.
Yeah, I agree. Some players just feel like they were meant to be with a certain team. And that's what you get when you watch Kenneth Murray and think of his fit with the Baltimore Ravens. He's an old school thumper with new school speed and quickness. He made plays inside and outside of the tackle box while being a team leader and a captain. And I think his speed is good enough that he won't be leaving the field on passing downs either. The Ravens, of course, they lost C.J. Mosley in free agency last year. They have a big need at middle linebacker, and I think Murray perfectly fits the mold.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. I think this was one of the easier picks to make. I have Kenneth Murray as well, 6'3" linebacker out of Oklahoma. I think he's very decisive and he's willing to take chances, and his 4.5 40 is pretty good. It's a pretty solid 40-yard dash time for a linebacker, and he runs and moves like a safety when in space. And I think that is a big necessity for a Ravens team that kind of has always lacked speed in the linebacker position. But I think they get it here with Kenneth Murray, and he averaged nearly 15 tackles for loss over the last 2 years, which is really impressive in my opinion. And I think you're going with Matt Judon over there, who got franchise tag, and you're adding to an already evasive and amazing pass rush with Calais Campbell over there in Baltimore. I hate being a Browns fan. You have to play against this team. I think this is a perfect pick if they can do this here. And I think their defense will already be solidified as easily a top 5 unit.
Yeah, so we moved from one of the easiest picks, in my opinion, to honestly one of the hardest, to the Tennessee Titans. I struggled with this one, but eventually I landed on them selecting Zach Bond, who I believe they'll be able to use as an edge rusher as well as a player that can drop back in coverage. I think that Mike Vrabel is one of those coaches that will love a player like Zach Bond because of his versatility. I believe he'll be able to use him in many different ways, whether that's getting to the quarterback, stopping the run, or dropping back in coverage if he needs to. Somewhat of a Swiss Army knife that they do not have currently on their roster. I think Zach Bond would be a pretty good fit for the Titans, but a pick that I really wasn't super confident on because they can go so many places here.
I think the Tennessee Titans would love to see a right tackle available in this spot, but after 6 offensive tackles went off the board, there is no value pick. Instead, the front office will turn to the cornerback position after not re-signing Logan Ryan. And I'm going to go with Jaylon Johnson from Utah. I think he is the kind of physical, athletic, press cover player that head coach Mike Vrabel will love. He's tough at the line, very aggressive in run support, and I think he has the tools to run down the field with wide receiver ones in the NFL. So now you have Jaylon Johnson, Adoree Jackson, Malcolm Butler. Those guys will give the Titans an answer to what they're seeing at wide receiver in the AFC South and in the postseason.
I agree with Srikar's assessment here. I think the Titans were a hard pick to make just because of I wanted to go defensive line here because of the loss of Jarrell Casey. You can easily go with an offensive tackle here with Austin Jackson, potentially maybe moving him to right. But I went with a cornerback as well, but I went with A.J. Terrell because I believe he has the potential to be a great shutdown corner on the outside. I love his man-to-man game. I think him opposite Malcolm Butler would be a great, great fit. And he has the ability to grind receivers during a press coverage situation. He's played in high leverage matchups in the postseason, obviously playing for Clemson. And my comparison to him was Pierre Desir, however you say it. I think both of them kind of play the same kind of play style. And I believe he's heading to New York. I'm not sure, So I think he's a great comparison there. He plays inside shoulder, and he leverages release outside. So I think he's got great lateral movement at the line of scrimmage, and I think that would be a great pick here.
Let's move on to the Packers. I think Packers, just like the Eagles, are set to take just the best receiver that is left. And for me, it was between Jalen Reagor and KJ Hamler. And I was back and forth about this one a lot, actually. But I believe that KJ Hamler, I think, will be a better fit for the Packers solely because I think they lack the combination of speed and hands, and I think that Hamler brings that. And Reagor's injury, I believe, last year in college football really, I think, would scare them off just a little bit, and so I think they'll take Hamler here. But to be honest, there's not a wrong pick between the two.
Yes, even after adding Devin Funchess in free agency, the Green Bay Packers need help at wide receiver. I'm going to go with Denzel Mims here. I think he gives Aaron Rodgers a big, fast receiver who can split safeties down the field or put a move on a cornerback underneath and make plays with the ball in his hands. At 6'3" and 207 pounds with 4.38 speed, Mims, and he's going to give Rodgers an athletic player at the receiver position he's not had in his NFL career. Tight end could be a consideration here, but I feel like this class lacks a true round one player at the position, thus the receiver pick to pair with Davante Adams and the ascending Allen Lazard.
I also went receiver here, and I'm very excited about this pick if I was a Packers fan. I think Denzel Mims is a great pick here. I agree with you, Srikar, for everything you just said. I think his build-up speed allows him to bypass stack coverages, and he's effective adjusting to throws, although he won't have to do much of that with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. But he's got a great combo of speed and height, and he's got this flutter starter go move at the line of scrimmage, which I think is second to none in this class. And he's got a lot of potential working there in Green Bay. And I think my thing is, though he's 6'3" and he plays more in the outside role, I can easily see Davante Adams kind of sliding more into the slot a little bit, like we kind of saw towards the second half of the season. And I would love to see a good mix of that, have Mims, Funchess, and Adams switch roles in the offense. I think that could be very lethal for a Green Bay team that has lacked wide receiver help besides Davante Adams. And your assessment of tight end, Srikar, I've just always been a big hater of teams that go a first-round pick on a tight end. It hasn't really worked out that much. Like Eric Ebron took 4 years to develop. Noah Fant, while he showed some upside, I believe you could have gotten him in later rounds. And honestly, the top 4 tight ends have all been late round picks. George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and Zach Ertz, Austin Hooper. They've all been late round picks. So I don't see why you would invest a first round pick on a tight end, especially because a lot of tight ends are kind of system based, just based on how they play, whether it's run blocking or the ability to kind of beat linebackers in coverage. That's just my opinion on it. So that's why I think Denzel Mims would be a perfect fit here for Green Bay.
Yeah, so I was wrong. Jalen Reagor did not get injured there. I was confusing him with Tylan Wallace from Oklahoma State. So to be completely honest, it's kind of too hard of a choice for me. KJ Hamler or Jalen Reagor, I believe, would be perfect for the Packers. If Denzel Mims falls to the Packers like you guys have in your mock, I think that'd be a perfect pick as well. I'm just high on him, so I have him going earlier to the Vikings. But any one of those 3 receivers would solve the biggest need that the Packers have. And honestly, that's the problem I've had with the Packers, is that they just don't have enough weapons. And so getting one of those 3 receivers in the first round of this draft really solves their biggest need. Srikar, as a Niners fan, would you like to start us on the 49ers here? And what do you think they will do with 31st pick?
Yeah, sure. You'd love to see a cornerback here for the 49ers, but a small run on them has left the pick a reach at this position. A trade back would also be fitting, but in a mock with no trades, the 49ers instead grab a plug-and-play starter at center who could also be a high-caliber guard. I'm going to go with Cesar Ruiz from Michigan. With the injury to Weston Richburg potentially costing him the 2020 season, and center is so vital in Shanahan's offense, I think Ruiz becomes a need and a value. He's a mean but agile centerpiece in the middle of the offensive line, and he has the moves to get upfield and lock out in the zone blocking scheme. Again, a cornerback here wouldn't surprise, but the fit would have to be phenomenal to pass on Ruiz.
Yeah, I went with Cesar Ruiz as well. And that being said, I think Garland is a pretty solid center, but I think Ruiz is the best center in this draft, and he's a good replacement for Mike Person. He's got excellent snap-to-step quickness. And obviously he plays with bend and leverage. He's played in the Big Ten, so he's had that good level of competition that I look for. He's consistent to run feet through double teams and down blocks, especially, again, in the zone scheme that you mentioned, Srikar. And I think that's what the Niners obviously utilize with their running back by committee. And I think if you can develop Ruiz with this offensive line, obviously learning behind Garland, Richburg, and all the other stellar offensive linemen that they have, I think this 49ers O-line is starting to head in the younger direction versus, their old timers like Joe Staley. So I think this is a good pick for them to kind of start, not necessarily rebuilding it, but kind of transition from this older generation of talent to a younger way.
Yeah, I really contemplated Ruiz here, but I ended up going to the opposite trenches, and I have the 49ers selecting Neville Gallimore, an athletic defensive tackle, because I believe they need to fill the shoes that DeForest Buckner left after that trade. I thought about Ross Blacklock here, defensive tackle from TCU. It was really up in the air between him and Gallimore, but I ended up picking Gallimore because I believe that his athletic profile fits what they had with Buckner, and you're never going to be able to replace him, but I think this is about as close as you can get in this class where they pick, and I believe that they'll be able to pick up a interior offensive lineman in the later rounds. I personally have Tyler Biadasz as my first interior alignment, so I don't think that reaching up for Ruiz at the end of the first round would be as smart of a move, but also I can see the Niners trading down here. It's just in a no trade mock, it's hard for them to do that. But if they could trade maybe into the middle of the second round, I'd love that if they just don't see a fit here at 31.
If you were looking at like interior D line as well, another name that stuck out to me was Marlon Davidson from Auburn, I believe. He's another option, but I could see why you want to go Gallimore or just D line in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good assessment. Just quick note on that. I don't think, do the Niners have, I don't even know. I don't think they have a second, third, or fourth round pick.
There's no picks after the first round until the fifth. That's why I was suggesting a trade back. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I can easily see a trade back there, especially just to gain capital. Or they can even trade up from the fifth and throw in some later round picks next year if they want to move into the fourth or a third. Because this is a deep draft class. This is one of the best draft classes we've had in a while, with a lot of mid-round talent that would be first rounders in any other given year. So I could see them wanting to trade up into the third or the second, or trade back from 31 if they don't see a fit. And then the final pick of the first round, I have the Chiefs taking Jaylon Johnson, a cornerback out of Utah, because they need to fill the shoes that Kendall Fuller left. And honestly, they have one of the worst cornerback rooms in the NFL now with the loss of Kendall Fuller. So there really isn't another pick for me other than a corner here at 32. Srikar, what do you think?
Yeah, the final pick in round 1 goes to the defending Super Bowl champions, but they could be trading out of this spot to add to their league low 5 draft picks. If the Chiefs stay at number 32 overall, I think a speedy 3-down linebacker is certainly on the list of needs for Brett Beach and Andy Reid, alongside cornerback and interior offensive linemen. But after Kansas City fell behind in every playoff game last postseason, Veach and Reed must remedy a defense that could not stop the run. So I'm going to go with Patrick Queen here. I have him sliding all the way to 32. I think Queen was a force for the LSU Tigers in 2019, showing speed to take on ball carriers, but a crafty, smart style that allowed him to be a consistent playmaker who just lived around the football. And that football IQ and speed combination would plug him into the middle of the Kansas City defense in week 1.
I think your assessment of Patrick Queen is it's pretty good, but I, in my opinion, I think he's better in pass coverage, and I see a lot of comparisons to Reggie Ragland with him. So I mean, he would be fine with the Chiefs, but I don't really see they would go with that here. I have them taking AJ Epenesa as my final pick in the first round, the edge out of Iowa. I had him slipping this far, so if I'm with the Chiefs, it's hard to pass up on them. And he's got excellent size with length and power, obviously. And we've talked about how a Big Ten defensive end, obviously having to go against these beefy offensive linemen. He has tools of the trade to set a strong edge, and he needs a little bit of work with technique and speed. I think speed would be the main thing here because he's got a lot of size at 6'5", I believe. But I think that can easily be developed in Kansas City. Obviously, learning from the likes of Chris Jones and Frank Clark. So I think this is a great pick here.
Yeah, so thank you guys for listening to our full mock draft. Obviously, the draft is about 7 days away now. Down in the description, we have our full mock drafts, so you can go back and look to see if you missed a pick. Also, we have our Spotify link down there. We're now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. It'll all be down there. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you get notified when we have future videos. We'll be bringing out a redraft of last year's first round, preparing for the draft, and then after the draft, we'll be able to get draft recap out as soon as possible. So we're really excited, ramping up to the draft, and we'll see you next time.